My name is Melissa Hopmeyer, and we are based out of Washington, D.C. in the USA.
I'm Kathryn Marsh, and I am 44 years old. As you heard, we're based right outside of Washington, D.C.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Herstory TV. This is Gertrude Matcha here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. And as you know, I am bringing you some of the most fascinating women in the world coming from all four corners of the globe. We are graced with the presence of two amazing women today who are going to talk about a topic that is very, very close to my heart. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our circle. Please introduce yourselves, say your names, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Thank you so much for having us, Gertrude. My name is Melissa Hoppmeyer, and we are based out of Washington, D.C. in the USA, and I'm 37 years old. And we host No Gray Zone podcast, as well as have a consulting business, Right Response Consulting. And Kathryn and I are special victims prosecutors here in the U.S. And we have spent our careers fighting for victims of sexual abuse and domestic violence and child abuse. And when the pandemic struck, Kathryn and I had a little more time on our hands than we normally do because we're normally in court so often. And we really thought about, what could we do to prevent these crimes from happening? Because, by the time we get and meet our victims, our survivors, the bad thing has already happened. And so many of them didn't know about resources or how crimes could be prevented because we don't really do a good job in the US of educating our community about how to prevent these crimes. And so I'll let Kathryn finish up the story, but that is the beginning story of how No Gray Zone and Right Response created.
Wonderful.
And I'm Kathryn Marsh, and I am 44 years old. As you heard, we're based right outside of Washington, D.C. And Melissa's right. We just wanted to find a way to share a lot of the resources and information that we know and individuals who work in gender-based violence and child abuse and sexual assault seem to know, but is so often not shared in the community. And I think one of the other things is Melissa and I are both moms. I have 3 young boys. Melissa has 2 girls. And when we would talk to our friends who are also parents, so often they'd say, "You're talking to your kids about what? We don't talk about that yet." And we felt it was really important to share some of the information about why you need to talk to your children at a young age about consent. And consent doesn't have to be sexual, but just the fact that children as young as 2 and 3 have body autonomy and body rights as well. And how to talk to your children about body parts. And when they get older, about sexual relationships and healthy relationships and dating and all of those things that I think sometimes as adults we start to take for granted, and we forget how important that is to talk to our children when they are young.
Wow. So how did the two of you actually come together? Did you meet in the court system? It's very, very rare to find 2 individuals who have the same passion like you do. How did you find each other?
Kathryn and I joke that we share the same brain sometimes. we met in the prosecutor's office. Kathryn came to work in the jurisdiction that I had been working in for a while, and I think we just connected over our passion for doing this work. I think people come and go as prosecutors, and people will come into special victims to get some experience. And then there are people who it is their driving force to help survivors. And that's definitely Kathryn, and I hope sometimes me too. And so I don't know if Kathryn, you want to add anything about how we kind of came together?
No, I think that's it. I think I could say I knew Melissa was my partner in crime when the first thing she gave me was a pin that said "Believe Women." And I was like, that's it. That's it at its most basic. And again, we go with we've broadened that now. We say it's not just women, it's believe survivors, and start with belief in all things. And to be able to work with somebody day in and day out who has just that passion and that drive to make sure that we are always communicating with the people in our community and beyond, something as simple as start with belief, and just to be able to have somebody to bounce ideas off of every single day is my pleasure in working with Melissa.
That is absolutely wonderful. Now, we find ourselves in the middle of this pandemic right now, and domestic violence, sexual abuse has gone up globally. What can be done from your view in the world? I'm just going to open this up so we can have this conversation. We're reading in the papers the statistics of especially domestic violence going up because people are stuck in the home with partners, with husbands, and it's turning into another pandemic of its own, correct?
It absolutely is. You know, I say there's two things that I think every single person can do every single day to help end intimate partner violence, and that's educate and advocate. I think when we look at domestic violence, so for so many years it was that happens in the home, and that's a family matter, and it's to stay behind closed doors. Yes. But what we know is that domestic violence impacts every single part of our society. You know, we know the statistics in the United States. We know that it's 12 million people every year in our country. We know that it's, Melissa, you can correct me, it's 20 people every minute who are victims of intimate partner violence. And we know that has a huge impact. They've done studies to find that days missed from work each year because of intimate partner violence is 36,000 jobs a year of just missed days. And so this isn't something that can stay behind closed doors, and it's not something that's a family matter. This impacts every single part of our society. And for me, Melissa's my person who has domestic violence inside out and backwards. And for me, I go with child abuse. And when I break down what the ACEs studies have shown for adverse childhood experiences and the stress that puts on a body through a lifetime, and it impacts heart disease, cancer, diabetes, chances for stroke, all of those can be increased from children who witness domestic violence in the household. And so if we want a healthy society, if we want a society where everybody can work and everybody has a fair chance, then we can't get there if we are not addressing domestic violence.
I couldn't say it better myself. And on top of that, when children experience intimate partner violence in their home, it perpetuates and creates generational abuse, right? Children who witness domestic violence are more likely to be in relationships that are abusive and to be abusive in relationships. And so if, we want to break that cycle and end intimate partner violence, we have to start now. We have to educate our community. We have to hold offenders accountable, and we have to educate our children.
Is that saying that hurt people, it does become generational, and where does the cycle break? So
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to a woman who's listening to us right now, who's in her home, she can't leave, she can't go anywhere, probably doesn't have any money, doesn't have any emotional strength to do something? What are the first steps in a situation like that?
I would say make a plan. It takes a while. It takes, I think, on average 7 times for a victim of domestic violence to finally leave. And that is usually when they've made a plan. And that can be, squirreling away the smallest amount of money every week that is not going to be, missed or accounted for. That could be getting copies made of your children's birth certificates or important medical documents. And the same thing for you. create what I guess we call a go bag, right? So put away a clean set of clothes for yourself, for any kids, all of your important documents in there, any money you're able to save. And then when you're safe and you've created that plan where you know, okay, I'm going to go to this hotel. I have enough money to stay there for a week. And then I'm going to, call my family, and I'm going to change my phone number, and I'm going to, when you're ready, you just get that bag and you leave everything else behind, and you go, and you just don't look back. Don't answer the phone when he calls. I recommend change your phone number, go somewhere where he or she doesn't know where you're going to be. A lot of people will say, I'm going to go stay with my family, but unfortunately, these abusers know family. So I always tell them, you need to go somewhere that you're going to be safe, that they're not going to come looking for you, because they will come looking for you. And once you have a plan in place of how long you can afford to stay in a place, I know we've helped victims, gather enough money to make a down payment for a new apartment in a new city.
Oh, wow.
And months and months and months until they squirreled together enough money to put that down payment then. And then they just went, once they were able to make that plan, they went, and they had to, you have to kind of start a new life. But that I think is my advice, is to just start small, start making a plan, get that bag together. And then when you're ready, leave, and just don't look back. And I know it's hard. And so many women have, they don't have financial power because that's taken from them. They don't have emotional strength because that is, either physically or emotionally beaten out of them. But they should know that there are people here who can help them, and that, they are strong enough to do it.
And I think that's what Melissa just ended with is also important. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think so often survivors, because of the trapped nature of being in the home or the power and control dynamic, don't understand how many resources are available to help, or because of how they've been treated, or they've been told nobody cares or nobody would believe you, that they start to think that. And so I think it's really important to know you can and you should ask for help, and to understand that there's no shame in where you are, that there's no shame in the fact that you have been in an abusive relationship. I think the one thing that we have seen throughout the world is that anybody can end up in an abusive relationship, from somebody who is homeless to the most powerful women in the world we have seen in abusive relationships. So don't take shame onto yourself. Don't take guilt onto yourself. Be willing and able to ask for help, and then make that plan to get out, because there will be people, this network of women that you make with Herstory, there's a network of women, there's a network of services who just want to help other women get out and be safe.
That is awesome. That is just absolutely awesome. So I'm going to ask you guys a really funny little question, and it's going to lead into 2 or 3 questions. If time was an illusion, and your past, your present, your future existed in the same timeline, and you could go back to your younger selves and have a conversation with that young woman who decided to go down this career path, based on what life has taught you, what would you say to her? There's a lot of young girls looking for careers, unsure of what to do. You seem to have found a vocation that sounds to me like it's your life purpose. It's your reason for being. What would you say to her?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Really, I think I look back when I was younger and how much I felt I had to do this, or I was afraid to try and experiment down a path that it might go. That's what growing up is for, right? That's what for, high school and college, that those age brackets up until our 20s is for. Figure out what your passion is. Don't be afraid to make that mistake. Don't be afraid to try something and fail. I mean, I have said, and I know Melissa feels the same, I have learned the most from every single failure I have made. When I try something the first time and it works, I don't learn that much from it. It just worked out well, So put yourself out there, make the mistake. Don't be afraid to fail, and don't be so hard on yourself. I think we are always our own worst critics. And it's so easy to say because I'm still my own worst critic, but don't be so hard on yourself.
I love
Yeah,
it.
I would, don't be so hard on yourself is definitely number one for me. And then I think the other thing I would say to my younger self is don't be afraid to take up space. I think as women, we don't take up enough space in the conversation, in the room, in life. You know, we always want to make sure that other people are served first and that other people's needs are taken care of. And we feel like we have, you know, this level of imposter syndrome that we don't belong in the room when we do belong in the room. And we do have, you know, good ideas, and we deserve to be put first sometimes. And I think that it took me a lot of years. I probably still don't learn that lesson completely, Kathryn would say, to know that, you know, I'm enough and that I'm good enough to be in the room and that my voice and my opinions matter. And so I think that's probably what I would tell myself is, you know, don't be afraid to use your voice and to take up room.
That is absolutely awesome. So now let's teleport you into the future. And you're going to have a conversation with the 100-year-old you sitting in a rocking chair, reflecting back on your life. If you could have a conversation with the future you, what would you say to her based on what you're doing with your lives right now?
I think I would say that I hope that I made a difference. That I hope that what I did wasn't just for money or, you know, fame or fortune. Not that any of those things have come to me, but that what the work that I did really made an impact on someone's life. And that people's lives were better because of the work that I did. And I think that that's the most important thing that you can leave as a legacy, is that people, when they think of you, they think that person is willing to help or that person helped. And that's what I would ask myself is, did you leave your mark and did you help?
Wonderful.
I can't top that, you know. It's you know, I sit here and I go with, you know, it's like Melissa said, but anytime I went camping with my dad when I was younger, his thing was, you always leave the place looking better than when you got here, right? It's always better when you leave. And I think that's the ultimate goal, is that I'm 100 and I look back and I say, you know what? I made my community better than it was before I started. And if I can say that at 100, then you know what? Life's complete, and I can say, good job. You led a great life. And that's the ultimate goal, right?
That is the ultimate goal. That is absolutely wonderful. And you know, for me, coming from Africa, every time I go back to my village, to my community, I've just come to realize that I just have to keep showing up as me. You know, sometimes these young little girls need to see the role models of what they can be themselves. When I created my tourism business, I started driving the truck with all these tourists to the village. And I remember I was at the school where I support 350 kids, and there were two little 6-year-olds, and they were following me around the whole day. And I stopped to hear what they were saying. And one of them said, "Oh my gosh, she's so beautiful." And then the other one said, "And she's driving the car." And I just marveled at the fact that I had shown up as the strong woman who can actually drive a vehicle, because women don't drive cars in my community. And even if I did nothing else for these children and I just kept showing up, my job was done. So as women, we are the role models for the future generation. And it really excites me to rub shoulders with women like you who are out there using the law, empowering women so they know their rights, they know where to find help. Thank you so much for what you're doing. And it's one woman at a time. For me, it's one story at a time. And I hope that there's somebody who's listening to this interview who is in the middle of the fog, And this interview has become the light at the end of your tunnel. Don't give up. The support is there. I'll be sharing all of the contact details with these two amazing women so you can get in touch and be supported and be inspired. So thank you, ladies, for gracing me with your presence today. It just lifts me up and make me do what I do every single day, to connect women to each other, to connect those who don't have the resources so they can find them. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. Come back again tomorrow. I'll be interviewing yet another amazing woman from a different part of the world. The Herstory Circle is about empowerment. It's about collaboration. It's about empathy. It's about compassion. And we're here to make a difference in each other's lives and to lift each other up. So thank you, ladies. See you tomorrow, everybody. Bye for now.